time, I'll call the February Board of Education meeting for Iredell-Statesville Schools to order. The chair would entertain a motion to go in closed session for personnel. Do we have any property, Kenny? No property. Personnel. Let's add in discuss formulate and adopt safety components of school not improvement plans. Which one do we want to do here? Formulate plans relating to emergency response on violence, I guess. Nope, the bottom one. Plans to protect public safety.
How about I make the motion and we get out and actually say that again? According to North Carolina General Statute 1433818.11, make the motion board enter closed session, discuss personnel and property.
No, personnel and action plans to protect public safety.
Action plan in reference to public safety. And to preserve the attorney-client privilege. Second.
I've got a motion second to go in closed session to discuss personnel issues, discuss and act on plans to protect public safety, and to preserve the attorney-client privilege. Any discussion? All in favor, aye. Aye. Opposed, no. We will now go into closed session. Thank you. You ready?
Born ready.
All right. At this time, the chair will entertain a motion to move from closed session to open session.
So moved.
Second, Mr. Chairman.
Got a motion second, move from closed session to open session. Any discussion? All in favor, aye? Aye. Passes unanimously. At this time, I'll call the Iredell-Statesville Schools Board of Education into open session for the month of February 2019. It is our policy to begin our meeting with a moment of silence in which board members, staff, and guests may privately reflect in their own way on the business of this meeting and the thoughts of doing what is best for America's and the world's most important resource, our children. Please join me in a moment of silence. Thank you. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance as the colors of the United States of America are presented by the North Iredell Junior ROTC cadets. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Before we move into our agenda, I would like to clarify our public comment sign-up procedure to be more aligned with our policy but allow everyone the opportunity to speak. We'll keep public comment sign-up sheet out front until we're ready to open the floor for public comment. Anyone wishing to speak to the board must sign up prior to that time. There will be no additional sign-ups once public comment starts. While the board welcomes our shareholders' views, please remember comments should not be slanderous or personal in nature. The board does not respond to public comments. To be fair to everyone, comments are limited to 3 minutes. Thank you. Board members, Mr. Johnson, any changes to our agenda?
Mr. Chairman, we have added item F, the request for an additional SRO at South Iredell High School, to your agenda tonight. Board members, any other changes? If not, the chair would entertain a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Mr. Chair, I move we approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
I've got a motion and a second to approve agenda as amended. Any further discussion? All in favor, aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Carries unanimously. Thank you very much. First, we'll do our consent agenda. First, we have personnel. Dr. Hussain, any changes from...
No, but you will note the comment that I have in your report regarding the question from last week.
Yes, ma'am. It was on number 7, transfers. Thank you.
Yes.
Any other questions or comments on the agenda? On the personnel? Board members, we have minutes from January 14th, Committee of the Whole, and the regular board meeting. You've had time to review these minutes. Any comments or questions on the minutes? If not, the chair would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda, including the minutes.
So moved.
Second.
We've got a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda and the minutes from January 14th. Any discussion? All in favor, aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Carries unanimously. Thank you very much. At this time, we have recognitions, but we do not have any. Mr. Johnson, board members, I would like to make a quick little statement. This week is North Carolina Bus Driver Appreciation Week. I'd like to ask for anyone in this room that's ever driven a school bus, would you please stand up? Now, you see all us old-timers, we actually probably drove it in high school. Now I'm going to ask anybody out there that's a bus driver today, please stand up. Thank you. Thank you very much. Let me tell you a little bit about what our bus drivers do in one day in Iredell-Statesville School. This is fascinating. In one day, on an average day, our bus drivers transport 10,075 students. They transport them 13,280 miles every day. That's a total of 748 hours our bus drivers are transporting our precious cargo, our children. Thank you very much. Thank you to the bus drivers. Thank you to all the support people, the transportation department. Y'all do a marvelous job, and this board wants to recognize you. Thank you. This time we'll move into our non-consent agenda. Mr. Williams.
Mr. Chair, board members, good evening. Tonight it's my privilege and honor to introduce Dr. Ed Schaefer. Dr. Schaefer is here to talk about the CTE program review and the plan of work that you requested from us. So, Dr. Schaefer, let me get you set up here.
Thanks, my friend. Good evening.
Good evening.
I have a special affection for bus drivers. I think that was wise to recognize them. That's difficult work. Not only you got a precious cargo there, you got to worry about discipline and other things. It's challenging. I'm here to just review with you the plan of work and the objectives of a review of the CTE program in the district that you've been kind enough to ask me to do. A little bit about background here. In North Carolina, the DPI requires periodically that the district do a review of their CTE program. Now, that can either be done by a self-review or inviting somebody in to assist in that process. And so I'm glad to be here to help with that. Some of the things that have been raised as we've talked about the CTE review was the challenge that exists between balancing enrollments at the local high school and the Career Academy and Technical School, which you refer to as CATS. Meeting the employment needs of the local economy. That's not only just Iredell County, but regionally. Are you doing that? How should you do that? Assuring that college and career readiness for all district students. And college readiness and career readiness are descriptions of kids. CTE is a program which is a tool to help you do that. Are the programs properly resourced, and then helping your students to obtain what we would call a credible credential, which is a documentation of their ability to do specific technical work. So that is some of the motivation for doing the study. I run this little outfit. I'm the sole proprietor, but I do call upon consultants to work with me from time to time. I live in Southport, down on the beach. My wife loves the beach. I don't know why, but she does. And so we're glad to be North Carolinians now. We've been down here for the last 5 years. My work is focused in career and technical education, but also in these other things that I have listed here. I've worked in New York State and in Virginia and in Illinois, doing work particularly in the CTE area. My background is as a teacher, a special educator, director, a principal, and a superintendent of schools. As a regional superintendent in New York State, we operate what are called boards of cooperative educational services, which our school districts are very small in New York State. We've got 700 school districts, 2/3 of them are under 2,500 kids. And so they need to share services, and that's what the BOCES do. We ran the regional trade and technical school, over 1,000 kids, and we grew it over about a 5-year period in the late 90s from about 450 kids to over 1,000. It's a shared time model, a lot like CATS. I've been the president and CEO of Pathfinder Village, which is a residential community for children and adults with Down syndrome. So I have a background in special education as well as CTE. I was most recently the director of the CTE Career and Technical Education Technical Assistance Center in New York, which is funded with Perkins money at the state level. And I've done some consulting several places. As a sole proprietor, I'm the president and the CEO of my outfit. And my background, my preparation was at SUNY Oswego and at Teachers College, Columbia. This is the overarching goal of the work that you've asked me to do, to develop a CT plan upon implementation, make available to all students a career and technical education program that can deliver the following: adjust your state, local, and national employment needs, particularly with a focus on Iredell County and with the 10-county metropolitan Charlotte area. Identify programs that might need closure. Are there some programs that are low enrollment or offer only an opportunity to enter into low-wage jobs or do not have a path to a higher level job? Anything that needs to be enhanced, and maybe there are some programs that need to be developed that you don't offer. I'll give you an example. You really don't prepare anybody to do network administration. Big demand area, some thought needs to be given to that. Taking a look at how to stimulate more participation in CATS, but to do it in a way that properly balances your enrollments at local schools with the regional center, which is a shared time program. Increase the participation of CTE students obtaining completer status and a career certificate, license, or credential. You have a lot of kids that get credentials, about 2,700. When you disaggregate that, however, about 1,700 of those kids are getting work readiness credentials, which are valuable, or passing tests in Microsoft Office Suite. And that knocks the number about, you have about 700, actually over 1,000 kids getting those. So when you look at the number of actual technical assessments that kids take and gain certification in, your numbers are far below that 2,700. And we're going to take a little look at that and hopefully come up with some ideas to help raise the numbers there. And then help students be prepared for college success without the need for remediation. We were in a meeting today with your IB, your business advisory group. People from the Mitchell Community College indicated that 60% of the students who enter at Mitchell require some form of developmental education. That is, they're not prepared to benefit from the instruction and they have to take remedial courses. So how we can address that is an issue. The objectives of the project is to assess the current status of the CTE programs. And I want you to understand there's some really good stuff going on, but there is some room for improvement. To help develop a common understanding on the part of the district and building people what high-quality CTE looks like. We've made a transition over the last 10 to 15 years of going from a vocational orientation to a career and technical orientation, and that means a deeper focus on work-based learning and a deeper focus on the embedded academic skills that are part of CTE programs. The most difficult texts that young people will challenge in their high school experience are in the CTE program because they're nonfiction and they're technical. And so the vocabulary and the reading level of those are quite high. Clarify the roles of the comprehensive high schools and the career and academy and technical school. And then help develop a long-term vision and outcomes for CTE, working with people in the district and your advisory groups, but also others in the community to develop that long-term vision. So you've got buy-in from your community on it. And then finally, to provide you and the superintendent with a 5-year plan and a work plan for implementing that. There's a number of things that perhaps you will need to do, but you're not going to be able to do them all at once. You're going to have to prioritize those. We have a task force that is working on this, and there are, about 18, 19 people on that task force, representatives from the board, the administration, parents, students, business folks are on that task force, and we've had our first meeting. We're going to have our second meeting on Wednesday. I've had the opportunity to speak with key leaders, the superintendent, with Todd, obviously, with Melanie and some others to get perspective from the district on what's going on. I've been out and trying to get the assessment of the status of CTE in the district, and we had a focus group meeting this afternoon with your business advisory, which you refer to as IBEAT. And then we need to develop a draft of the long-term plan with the task force, get them to endorse it, and then present it to you. Here's what we've done to date. Formed the task force and had our first meeting. We also took a look at that first meeting at the district strategic plan so that whatever we come up with in the CTE effort as a recommendations for you is in alignment with the district plan that you have, so that we're not doing a bird walk, taking things in a different direction that may be outside the bounds of that effort. I've, to date, met with 4 principals. I've got 4 more visitations this week, a couple tomorrow, a couple on Thursday. Had those meetings with the deputy, the superintendent, the chamber executive, economic development leadership. I'm in the process of collecting and really have gotten some very good information on projected employment information in Iredell County and the 10-county region. And that data is looking at what is the projected growth of particular employment areas and aligned with the career cluster model that the state uses and is nationally recognized. And then a focus group meeting with the IBEAT and the CTE advisory. I want to go and visit the early colleges and see where their effort is in career readiness. I'm going to have some meetings with the exceptional children's director, secondary principals, parents, and students. I have a set of CTE standards and elements, and we'll be taking a look at that and determining what the gap might be between what you're currently offering and what a high-quality program should include. So the task force will be provided with that information going forward. And then the task force has to do its really work, consideration of key objectives, what are going to be the focus pathways for students, what are the strategic actions to get this thing implemented, and what are the resources that are necessary to do that. And then we'll have to draft the plan and the final review by the task force and present hopefully we'll get the plan to the superintendent and you all by 1st of June. So that's basically it. And if you've got some questions, I'd be glad to entertain them and do the best I can.
Mr. Chairman, Dr. Schaefer, how long have you been in Iredell County?
How long have I been here?
Yes.
I was here a couple of weeks ago for a full week, and I'm here this week for 4 days.
So when this is all over, you'll be able to tell us how we stand with the rest of North Carolina.
We'll be able to give you some background on that, certainly. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because we feel like we had a great place where a lot of visitations come from all over the state, even out of the state, to visit our cats. And, if we're not doing something right, then we appreciate your help.
Glad to give you some feedback.
Any other questions or comments of Dr. Schaefer or Todd?
Now, by the way, your folks here have been terrific. Been very welcome, open, and people have been pretty direct and pretty honest with me, too, so I appreciate all of that. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Mr. Armstrong, we've got some policies for first readings. You review these, see if there's questions from the board. We had, you went through these at the Cal meeting. Review them, see if we any questions.
Good evening, Mr. Page, board members, Mr. Johnson. Last Monday night, I presented 13 policies to you all in our committee of the whole meeting, and just back here tonight for a first reading to see if you had questions about any of the policies that I presented last Monday.
I don't, Mr. Armstrong, but I want to thank you for clarifying policy 1510, 4200, 7270 by putting in there, what the old was and what the new is proposed.
Yes, and I want to publicly thank Ms. McCarrier for doing that. Thank you, Kelly.
We also got a cleaned up copy of the one I requested. Thank you for that. Yes. Kelly. Now, these are going to lay on the table now for 30 days.
Yes, sir.
And we'll bring them back next month at the BOE meeting.
For a vote. Yes, sir.
For a vote.
Yes, sir.
They'll be available at the Cal meeting if anybody has any questions. So, any other comments on looking at these policies?
Thank you, Mr. Page.
Thank you. At this time, there's a lot of policies there. We will discuss the BOE meeting schedule for 2019-20. As we discussed at the Cal meeting, we're proposing for the public, we're proposing to move all our meetings to the meeting room at the Career and Technical School in Troutman, which will have be set up a little better, especially for video, and then the video and equipment down there. The room will be set up that way. It will give us a chance to have our own room where when we have to have called or emergency meetings, we don't have to be at the mercy of trying to get this room from the county. We also discussed moving 5 meetings to having regional meetings at the 5 traditional high schools. The proposal is we had 3 months that we would have, 4 months it looks like, that we would have trouble with either a conflict on the committee of the whole meeting or a conflict on the regular Board of Education meeting, and we would run combined meetings. At this time, board members, you've got what we're looking at. Mr. Johnson, have you heard from the principals? Are they?
The only principal that we heard from was Sheila Jenkins of Statesville High School, and she said whatever date you want her school to host, it will. As
soon as we know which schools we'll be going to, we've asked all the principals. We just threw this out at them last Monday to look at their calendars for next year, which I know is a long ways out, and we will set up which meetings will be at the high schools. The plan right now is meetings October 7th, December 2nd, February 3rd, April 6th, and May 4th will be at the high schools. We will be getting there. We will start at with a public, we will have our closed session from 5 to 6, and from 6 to 6:30. At these meetings, we will have a public comment section at each one of the committee meetings that are being held in the regional meetings in those high schools, just to, again, allow people from those areas that may have a problem getting here to be able to speak to the board and for us to hear more about what our constituents want. I'm also personally planning on being able to be at those meetings directly after school, and I'm going to ask the Board of Education member from that region, that district, to also be there after school to meet with the faculty if they'd like to meet with us. Again, we're trying to get out in the community more and hear from them. Board members, you see the what we've got is a draft right now. Comments, questions, let's discuss this and see if we're ready to vote on it.
I think it's great that we're going to allow the public to speak at those high schools.
Absolutely. I just want to echo that. Also, I support it 100%. I mean, anytime we can get more buy-in from the community, what we're doing, and I think that's a good thing. We're going in the right direction. I'm glad to see us taking this out to the community rather than waiting on the community to always come to us.
And I know I threw it out at you because we hadn't even discussed the possibility of being there right after school for the representatives, but I think we owe it to our faculty at all these schools to be available to them also.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
is everybody good with that?
Yeah.
If everybody's good with this calendar, now the only thing we are planning on, hopefully, Dr. Miller, we should be able to be in there by July, the new room at CATS, correct? Yes. Okay. That could hold us up, but we hope to do that. Any further discussion?
Explain October the 14th. The CATS meeting on October the 14th.
Okay. That's just, we're going to move all our meetings there. Why?
Is that?
That'd be our BOE meeting.
I mean, that's the BOE.
Yeah.
Is that going to be a combined meeting?
No.
So
The committee of the whole.
you did not put the Cal meeting dates in here.
That's one of the dates that.
Committee of the whole is on the 7th, but it's TBA, to be announced. Where
For high school.
that's going to be one of the high schools. Sam, just Sam.
Okay, you got it on the calendar.
Right.
Okay, gotcha. Thanks.
Okay. All right. Any other questions, discussion? If not, the chair would entertain a motion to approve the 2019-20 meeting schedule for the Iredell-Statesville Schools Board of Education.
So moved.
Second.
I got a motion second to approve the 2019-2020 meeting schedule of Iredell-Statesville Board of Education. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor, aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Proposals for second readings. These will be voting. Dr. Lassane, and we will do all 8 at one time under D, and then we'll proceed to E.
Mr. Page, Mr. Johnson, members of the board, you can see the policies that are outlined for second reading, and we are asking for a vote on these tonight. Just a quick overview. Policy Code 1720, 4015, 7225, discrimination, harassment, and bullying complaint procedure. You can see the changes there. Mostly updates the legal references and footnotes, along with the addition of that anonymous safety tip line that is now required by state law. Policy Code 7130 focuses on licensure, and you can see that there are a number of changes that are recommended to that policy. Some are required due to changes in state board policy. Some are recommended by the School Boards Association. Policy Code 7300, staff responsibilities, add some specific pieces related to driver education instructors, as well as has the legal references and footnotes. Policy Code 7610 deals with defense of board employees, and it adds that condition that's related to some recent legal case studies that limits the board's obligation to provide a legal defense for employees to situations where the employee does not have access to a legal defense provided through insurance or through other liability coverage. Policy Code 7730, Employee Conflict of Interest. You can see that there were some changes to the introduction there. It reorganizes the policy pretty significantly. It specifically addresses sections related to contracts, misuse of information, non-school employment, and the receipt of gifts. You can see the other areas that are revised there as outlined in the memo. Policy Code 7920 continues with what we talked about last month, the removal of the highly qualified status language, as well as the cross-references, as well as the recommendation by Mr. Howell. We changed the numbers to bullets. So you should notice that change. There are two policies that only include technical changes. One is Policy Code 7405 regarding extracurricular and non-instructional duties. There are some changes to the legal references and footnotes for that. And the other is Policy Code 7410, teacher contracts. As was mentioned by Mr. Kennington last month, you have the sample policy there just because there are only changes to footnotes. If you remember, we have a specific option that is used in our policy that you will find. So we would transfer those footnotes over to our Iredell-Statesville Schools policy. These policies have set for 30 days. I've had no comments on any of these policies. Are there any questions?
So we'll be voting on 1 through 6, is that correct?
That is correct.
Mr. Chairman, as I stated in the CAL meeting, Board Policy 7920, the reduction in force, the criteria by which this is done is not specific. And I said at that time, if we don't organize it, and I think our employees deserve that, if we're going to take their jobs, I think they need to know where they stand in relationship to other employees, that someone else would. Now, it does say in the policy, the paragraph under those things, it says, the superintendent shall develop a system for using the above-mentioned factors to determine which employees will be recommended to the board for inclusion in the reduction of force. Now, and that's fine, but I think it needs to be stated up front. And I know that there would be a difference if we reduce force in an individual school rather than the entire system. But if it's okay, I would like to vote against this policy as it stands. I would vote for the others if you would allow me to do it that. If you could bring the vote that way. Thank you.
No problem.
Mr. Page, can I also just clarify, Mr. Howell, the board has to vote to institute a reduction in force before any of that is done?
Thank you. Yes, ma'am, I knew that.
So the policy just states that at that time, Mr. Johnson, the superintendent, would give us the procedure. And I understand why that may vary depending on the amount of reduction in force that we have to do, or where the reduction in force is located, or what department it's in. So I understand that. At this point, any other discussion on any policies?
Mr. Page, Dr. Lassane, do 7405 and 7410, even though they're technical changes only, don't they need to be voted on?
I thought for the technical changes, they typically have not required a vote.
Okay.
That's per our policy, is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah, typically, yeah. Okay. Then if there's no further discussion at this time, the chair would entertain a motion to approve policies 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. That would be policy 1720, 4015, 7225, 7130, 7300, 7610, and 7730. Those 5 policies. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second, Mr. Chairman.
I've got a motion and a motion and a second to approve the first 5 policies presented to us tonight. Any discussion on these 5 policies? All in favor, aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. At this time, the chair would entertain a motion to approve policy 7920 as recommended. Is there no motion?
Mr. Chairman, could this be tabled
Yes, sir.
and allow Mr. Howell to work with Dr. Lassine?
If I have no motion, it will, or either we can motion to bring this up at a later date.
And I would like to include Mr. QT in that because this is the School Boards Association's recommendations.
This is a recommendation.
I tend to agree, Mr. Howell.
And there are pieces that are, if you'll note, the memo required due to changes in law.
I personally don't see where again, this is the policy. It states that he will come up with that. We can certainly, before we put any reduction in force in place, we have to approve it. I'm not sure that it's always going to be the same need for the same procedures, depending on whether it's district-wide or not. But this is at the pleasure of the board. If we don't have a motion, we're going to move on. We won't be able to vote if we don't have a motion.
And if we don't have a motion, I'll make a motion, Mr. Chairman, that we table policy 7920 and allow our attorney and Mr. Howell to meet with Dr. Lassine to make sure that the policy is agreeable to the full board.
Second, Mr. Kennington's motion.
I've got a motion and a second to table policy 7920 to bring back to the Mr. Howell and any other board members that like to meet with Dr. Lassine, Mr. Johnson, bring it back in March. Is that correct?
School board attorney and attorney.
Yes. Very good. I've got a motion and a second to table policy 7920. Any further discussion? All in favor, aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Thank you, Dr. Lassine. All right. At this point, Dr. Lassine, we have policy 7340, employee dress code.
Yes, Mr. Page, Mr. Johnson, members of the board, I am bringing forth policy code 7340 for second reading also. This would be the addition of a new policy per conversations last month and ongoing conversations for longer than that. In researching, this is a standard recommended policy with some changes that we have instituted as part of our recommendation internally. You can see those changes from the School Boards Association recommendations in red, which includes our section on reasonable accommodations. I'll remind you again that in my discussion with the School Boards Association, they are actually planning to add language like this into their standing policy, as well as uniforms. And based on feedback, you will see in the introductory paragraph there is a recommended change. Per your request last month, we surveyed principals, and I have provided you with the dress code feedback. You can detect in reading that feedback that there is some employee feedback in there also. It's not just principal feedback, but you can see those items outlined. In reviewing the comments there, we feel that the policy, the recommended policy, actually covers the items that are in the comments. I think we do have some clarification. For example, in those comments, there were bus drivers who assumed that uniforms applied to bus drivers and that we were saying that bus drivers would have to wear uniforms. Well, those references to transportation refers to the mechanics, not the bus drivers. So I think that there are things like that that will require clarity within our work environment. You probably also noted comments related to the vagueness of the policy, and again, as outlined in the memo and our discussion with the School Boards Association and our legal representation, we have to be careful that you do not make a policy so strict that you drive yourself into some serious issues in enforcing that policy. And so we feel that this addresses the concerns and gives the principals what they need in order to hold, principals and supervisors, in order to hold their employees accountable for holding up a professional standard. So I will entertain any questions regarding the policy and the relevant feedback.
Mr. Chairman, Dr. Lassane, I read the feedback. I'm all for the policy, giving the principals the authority. But what struck me in the teacher feedback was that they were more, and this happened several times, they were concerned about consistency among their bosses.
Absolutely.
And I don't know if we can ensure that, but I think that was a very concern. I don't think anybody was so concerned that their principals would make them do things that they didn't like. But they were concerned about consistency. So, that's what I got. And I appreciate that feedback because I think that's important.
Well, and Mr. Howell, we deal with that every day with all of our policies. And so that's why we have, some of the other pieces, because anytime that there's a question about consistency, then we have to work with that site supervisor and see what evidence we have behind that to either support their consistency or coach them forward with making sure that they are consistent in the application.
The only other thing that I saw was one of the bus drivers was concerned that if one principal allowed them to wear shorts driving the bus in the hot months, and another principal did not, and they drove for both schools, but I would hope we could work that out. There wouldn't be an issue.
We would work with putting those two principles together.
Thank you.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to accept policy 7340 as presented.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I've got a motion and a second to accept 7340 as presented. Any further discussion? I would like to say, I'd like to read the first two sentences. The board believes that appearance and the conduct of its faculty are of supreme importance in establishing and maintaining a positive image for education in the community and for presenting a good example for students. Therefore, the board affirms the expectation that all personnel will be professionally, neatly, and appropriately attired for the work to be done. And I cannot believe some of the comments that I've seen on this. They're going to make teachers wear ties. They're going one person, I can't believe they're going to tell me what kind of shoes I've got to wear. This is about, I've seen the most said about a simple statement, and I was shocked that we found out we did not have any dress code in our policies. This is written by a bunch of lawyers in Raleigh that we pay money to maintain and that we get our policies from, that all 115 districts get their policies from. I think this is very simple. We're not, to start with, some of the principals thought we were going to tell them how they had to dress and all this stuff for their teachers. No, we're just telling the principals it's their responsibility to make sure that their people, we expect them to be professionally, neatly, and appropriately attired. And I absolutely cannot see any reason that this is not a reasonable expectation for our employees. Any further discussion? All in favor, aye? Aye. Opposed, no?
No.
All right, let's do this by hand. All in favor of the policy 7340, please raise your hand. All opposed, please raise your hand. 4 to 3, it passes. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to ask Dr. Hussain, just because the two new board members might have the same question. Now that these policies have been revised, this policy is a new policy, tell the board how you disseminate these policies to the teachers and to the community.
Well, it funnels through the principals, and they are responsible for sharing it at each of their sites. There have been occasion, I would suggest that in the case of a brand new policy, that we send the information directly out to all staff. And I know for this one in particular, that is what I intend to do.
Do we have any of the policies put on the website, the ISS website?
They're all on the website.
Okay, so any person in the community can go to the website and pull up any of the policies? It's
under your board connections, and all of the policies are there. And as soon as they're updated, they're readily available there also.
Thank you.
All right, this time, Mr. Armstrong, we have discussed adding the SRO at South Iredell for the rest of this year. The City of Troutman has given us a proposal that we use 2 part-time officers. South Iredell is about 1,600 students. Is that correct, Mr. Johnson? Yes. And at this time, they have 1 SRO. Lake Norman High School has 2 full-time SROs.
Yes, sir.
Statesville now has about 1 full-time and 1 part-time. Is that correct? Or one that's stationed there?
Yeah, they have 1 stationed there permanently, and one of the supervisors tries to spend as much of his time as possible on that campus. I do think what they've asked us, Mr. Armstrong, it was $10,800 for the rest of this year.
Right, for the remainder of this school year.
Certainly, as a representative from that area, I definitely support this. But I would like to make 2 quick comments. One, Troutman's in kind of an odd situation is the fact that we have our 2 big choice schools there, our IB school and our Career Center. And so on most days there's about 3,700 students in the city limits of Troutman. Yet Troutman at the last 2010 census, they only had about 500 school-age children. So they are getting put on a tight spot. But the one thing that I'm impressed with here is we're trying something new. We're trying 2 part-time officers, greatly reducing the cost of the SROs. So I think that's an interesting pilot for us to look at. And you know, it may be something that some of our other law enforcement agencies may look at in the future to reduce the cost. But again, just not sure how that's going to work, but I think it's worth trying.
Could I just clarify that that's only for the remainder of this year, right? Next year it would be 2 full-time people, right?
We're not saying
Right,
this is just for the
we're
remainder.
only addressing the remainder of this year. It would be nice to have, tonight, if you vote, you're just looking at the remainder of this school year. Okay. At $10,800.
Right. I thought there was in the presentation that was made at the last BOE meeting
Right.
in this room.
He said it'd be a nice to have, but he was if they could get any help at all with the remainder of this school year and then go back to the drawing board for the 1920 school year.
Okay.
Be willing to do that.
Okay, that's my misunderstanding.
Yes, that's a great question.
I want to just make this comment before we get down to voting on this. That I support having the officers there. We've talked about their staffing levels at the town of Troutman. There are a lot of resources there in the town of Troutman as far as being able for officers to respond that they don't have at Lake Norman High School. Being so far out into the that area of the county, they're just there could be more done with the resources that they've got there available to them, rather than. And we'd love to put 2 at every high school, but we have limited resources to deal with. So that's my position.
How many students do we have at the CAT Center? We have one there now. And there's how many students there? 300, 400?
That go through the school each day.
There's about 300 some in the morning. About
we have
300.
one there now, so why can't we take and spread him between two schools?
And when I talked to Chief Sells about that just yesterday, as a matter of fact, he and I talked about that, and he said that the SRO who is at CATS in the morning hours tries to go over to South Iredell, and then at lunch he tries to go over to South Iredell. So they're doing that already.
Yes.
So they essentially have 1.5 right now.
Okay.
And I know that South Iredell does an outstanding job in keeping up with their their MacBooks, and they have a great plan in how they retrieve when students leave South Iredell that no other high school has in place, and they do use their school resource officers in those cases, and just the mere size of how spread out South Iredell is, and all the different entrances. But I do know that they were just asking for the remainder of this school year.
Yes, sir.
Well, I think that we certainly want to keep our kids safe, and I understand that's a priority. But also, this is kind of coming to us in the middle of the school year, and it's a non-budgeted item, and we don't really. So where would that money come from if we approve this?
Mr. Johnson, can you answer that question?
Each year, there are positions that are vacant, and we don't pay somebody's salary for a month or two while we're looking for replacements and whatnot. There's other areas of the budget that are over budgeted and some are under budgeted. And then you've always got your fund balance that you can fall back on. You are budgeted to use fund balance this year, and so if we're not able to identify savings from other areas within the budget, then it would come out of your fund balance.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion, please, to approve the request for an additional SRO at South Iredell High School for the remainder of this school year only at a cost of $10,800, and for it also to be stipulated in that it is just for this year.
Second Mr. Kennedy's motion.
I've got a motion and a second to approve an SRO for South Iredell for the remainder of this year at a cost of no more than $10,800. That is only for this year. It's stipulated in this motion that this is only for the remainder of this year. At this time, any further discussion?
I need to make another comment to be sure that, anyway. At this particular time of the year, that we are looking at the budget as we look at it, and when we look at the total budget at this time, this is infinitesimal. This is a very small amount. At the same time, we need SROs everywhere. We've bounced SROs for the last umpteen number of years. How many do we have? How many do we have here? We're going to move them. What do they cover? All this sort of stuff, and how we're going to pay for them. So here we have, like he said, at this time of the year, we're adding this amount for this half of a SRO to cover that particular area. I have no problem with SROs. I have no problem with the people that we have in place. I have no problem with 2 at that particular area. I have no problem with any of that. It's almost like one of these that you continue to get on the telephone. If you'll give me $25 now, I'll never call you the rest of the year. Well, if you could tell me that, if you'll fund this for South Iredell SRO, I won't ask you for anything else to be added to the budget for the rest of the year. Well, just like that guy on the telephone, you won't say that because that might not happen. So I hesitate at this particular time to do this to our budget when the budget is already. And when that question was asked at our COW meeting last week, the direct answer was the fund balance. And we already know, and I know it could come from somewhere else, but that is the basic bottom line is the fund balance, which we hate to touch. So, it's not the matter of the SRO. It's not the matter of those things. It's the matter of the funding at this particular time of the year. I mean, just mention all that when you're coming up for a vote and starting to think about it.
Mr. Kelly, can I make one comment? I have an email from last March 14th of 2018, from Chief Sells making the same request. And he said last Monday he does come to me and Mr. Johnson each and every year making this request. So it's not a first time.
And at that time also, oh, he's so good. At that time also, if that request was made at that time last year, then we've been through the entire budget process since then.
Yeah.
And we've had SROs here, there, and everywhere, and all the different ways that we've funded them and not funded them and what we've needed and all that. So the same request is based upon after the whole process has happened again.
I would encourage
the whole
him
thing
to,
has
yeah,
happened.
I would encourage him to prepare for next school year right now, since we're in the middle of our budget talks.
Well, I assume that's going to happen because, just like Ms. Carver said, he assumed that he is already asking for next year, which he's not. He's just asking for the rest of this year. But at the same time, there is that feeling, well, if I can get this half this year, somebody's going to fund it for next year, which could occur.
Right, they're going to ask. I can.
Sure.
Yeah,
I know they're going to ask.
They're going to request.
Well, we know they're going to
Well,
ask because
they asked, and we turn them down for the year.
Right.
Yeah.
But does this not undercut our vetting process? I think is what Mr. Kelly's saying.
Undercut
Is
what?
our vetting process of what belongs in the budget and what, I mean, if we've got a list of priorities in the budget process before I was elected onto the board, and this is what we decided we could afford for this coming year. Now we come halfway through and say, hey, let's add something else. Well, what's going to be next month? I mean, it undercuts our process, I think.
That's right.
Yeah, but we've already set a bad precedent. We already did this. We put 4 new people on several months ago. We won't put 2 more on. We got that voted down. So we keep talking about safety, and this is a small portion.
I think I've mentioned, if you just do it now and not do it again, well, we've already done it.
Yeah, we already said it. It's not a good. It's
Not
not a good
that
budget
the
process to put
SROs are a
people
bad
on.
idea.
That's
We
right.
need SROs everywhere.
Right. This is a little different situation. And I went to the town of Troutman. I talked to them, and they fund half of the officer at the SRO we have at CATS. And they did not step forward like I thought they might, because I said, we might do it, you might do it, let's split it. And they're not splitting it with us right now. But still, that may happen next year. But I still think if you're going to add on some money and spend a little bit of money, which is not much, for the rest of this year, this is a good investment right here.
You're talking about when you were at the Troutman.
I went to the town.
Okay. So they didn't have the money to fund it.
Well, they did have the money. I couldn't convince them. I kind of got caught.
Couldn't convince them, right.
Okay.
We have unlimited funds here, so we could.
No, but they're doing a budget process too. But
No, but I'm just saying all that should be out there on the table.
Yes.
Before we decide.
Absolutely. I'm not fond of putting something else in the budget. And the principal sent us emails this afternoon requesting this. Again, when I have a principal that's requesting and the law enforcement's requesting it, especially South is so open. It's gotten Mr. Armstrong, how many entrances and exits?
I think, Dr.
7.
Miller, is it 7 to 8?
Yeah. So,
7 or 8.
Entrances.
at least Lake Norman's got one way in, one way out. West has one way in and one way out. It makes it difficult. I will give Troutman a pat on the back. They do traffic before and after
Absolutely.
school.
Yes, they do.
And then that's one problem that we have with the officer at CATS is the reason they funded half of the officer at CATS was the fact that we've got that campus is open and we've got cars coming in and out. Kids going to class coming from other schools. That is an issue. That school is so wide open, and we had an issue down there last year.
Yes.
That we were lucky. We were real lucky on that.
Yes, sir.
If that kid had been in school, we would have had a
It
mess. But it would have been over with by the time the SRO, who was just at the other building at CATS, responded. But again, I totally get this. I just said let's vote on this and get it one way or the other because I'm personally think we've kicked this can down the road. If it's $10,000, we either spend it or we don't. Let's vote on this thing and move on. I'm not going to be upset either way it goes.
Mr. Chairman, before you ask for a vote, I would like to just simply say, not being melodramatic at all, but it's going to come across that way.
Mr. King.
We have the police chief of a city making this request. We have the principal of the school begging for this request also for the remainder of the year. And God forbid, if anything were to happen at that school from this day through the end of school, I don't think a $10,800 price tag could ever be placed on what might happen. And we don't know that. We pray every night that it doesn't happen. But I cannot vote against the request of a police chief and the principal of an over 1,600 student population school.
Mr. Chairman, I'm torn between the money and our first responsibility as elected officials. And our first responsibility is the safety of the children. And our second responsibility is their education. So if you look at it that way, then the safety and security of the children that are in the school system takes, the front seat. So I'll have to vote for this, even though money is tight. Thank you.
On behalf of the town, I believe the town, I'm not speaking for them, but I do work real close with them. They're going to provide the vehicle, all the equipment, and everything. This is just basically the money to pay for that person's salary.
That's correct.
All the town is stepping forth with all the equipment, uniforms, and whatnot.
Yes, sir.
Any other discussion?
Well, I just want to say that, and I understand what the other gentleman here is saying, but, really, my point of contention is not the money, it's not the SRO officer, but it's the process which we go through to do a budget every year, and that this is actually disrupting that process, and it's next month it may not be SRO officers, it might be something else, and that's a real problem, I think, for us as a board, that we have to keep dealing with these issues mid-year. But I do agree we need more SROs. We've hopefully got a great security plan coming together here for safety, and so. But anyway, it's just the process. I think we're in the middle of the year.
Thank you, Mr. Poindexter.
I'll call for the question.
Question's been called for. Any further discussion? All in favor of supporting the SRO at South Iredell for a maximum of $10,800 for the remainder of this year, say aye. Aye. Opposed, no.
No.
5-2, is that correct?
Yeah.
5-2, it passes. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
That is the end of our non-consent agenda. At this time, we're going to move to public comment. At this point, we have 8 signed up for public comment. Remember to please approach the microphone when I call your name. Tell us your name and what you'll be speaking about. First, we'll have Sean Turner. Mr. Turner, you'll have 3 minutes, sir. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Sean Turner, and I'm coming forth tonight to speak about the toxic environment and culture at North Iredell. I had spoken to Mr. Johnson. I've spoken to a couple others at the county office, not just a month ago, but also 3 years ago. a little over 3 years ago, I was sitting in the same room when we were dealing with part of this same toxic environment / culture. Why I'm here tonight has to do with an employee. It has to do with an employee of which, why do we let things go this far? Tonight in your CTE assessment here, I heard the word assessment. Do we do an assessment with a basketball coach? Mr. Howe, you were not a current, but you were an athletic director at North Iredell before. You handled situations like this. Mr. Page, you were a high school coach who coached against me in the 90s, and you understand my integrity of the game. But at the same time, we had situations this year where a coach was told that he had to play all 15 players on the team. Why should some of these kids still even come to a game when you know how hard it would be to try to win a basketball game and play 15 players in a high school basketball game? Our kids, I feel, were taken advantage of. They were taken advantage of by an adult, by an employee who had personal agenda against certain kids and parents, and he used kids through this. I know I'm just a farm boy raised in Harmony, North Carolina, but Mr. Poindexter, you represent us. You should come and see part of what this environment and this culture that's been going on shouldn't happen. Because, Mr. Carter, this same environment was happening in Lake Norman area. You wouldn't allow it. Someone would have came forth and stopped this that I say has been happening for 5, 6 years. Mr. Gallion, you're a former North Iredell graduate. Please, let's take care of this situation. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is, and I'm sorry, I'm probably going to butcher the name, Miss Bailey. I will let you pronounce it correctly. And you'll have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening. We are here today as concerned parents. We first want to say thank you for what you do for all of our kids in the Iredell-Statesville School District. We know what you do is not always easy, and we appreciate your willingness to listen and hear the concerns of all citizens. Tonight, we are gravely concerned. Over the past weeks, there has been an unrest in our community. We are concerned parents representing all students in Iredell County schools. We want to address the inequalities in education within our local schools and the lack of minorities in leadership and teachers' positions. Iredell-Statesville School District demographics percentage of principals in 2017 was Black, Iredell-Statesville School, 3%. The state, 24%. White, Iredell-Statesville School System, 97%. The state, 74%. And other, 0% in Iredell-Statesville School District and 3% in the state of North Carolina.
Thank you. Next, we have Miss Bailey. Levis.
We also feel there is a disparity with the performance of our Black students as compared to non-white students in both reading and math assessments at the elementary, middle, and high school levels. Last year's EOC ECO subgroup data shows that Black students perform well below non-white students. Black students performed at 18.8%, Hispanics 31%, Asians 44.3%, and white students performed at 50.3%. I'm sorry, I lost my place. Black students 31%, Asians 89.2%, Hispanics 45.4%, white 70.4%. We in Iredell County Statesville Schools truly closing the achievement gap for the minorities students. Are we? No.
Thank you. Is this T. Bailey? Takar.
What do we want? We want diversity in teachers. Teachers who look more like the students we serve. Teachers who are more responsive to alternative learning styles. Students show that having more teachers that reflect the student body are culturally aware of the student body results in a higher graduation rates and fewer dropouts. 80% of North Carolina public school teachers are white, according to the data from the Department of Public Instruction, while less than 50% of the students are white. That means many minority students who make up almost half of the state's public school enrollment miss out on the benefits of having a teacher who looks like them. Research from the Institute of Labor Economics showed that black students in North Carolina taught by one black male in the 3rd, 4th, or 5th grade were 30% more likely to graduate from high school. Students in elementary, when put in a classroom with a same-race teacher, perform better on standardized tests and are more favorable for teacher perceptions. Assigning a black male to a black male student to a black teacher in the 3rd, 4th, or 5th grade significantly reduces the probability that he drops out of high school, particularly among the most economically disadvantaged black males. Do the current hiring process of Iredell-Statesville schools show that? No. But you know what it does show? It shows that the black people that Iredell-Statesville schools do hire are hired help or custodians.
Thank you. Avis Schofield.
Good evening. All stakeholders should be involved in the process of hiring. Other schools are given an opportunity to provide feedback prior to appointing or hiring a principal. Why was Statesville High stakeholders not given this opportunity? The current hiring practices lack transparency. Another concern is the misrepresentation in our schools and the makeup of the members that serve on the school board. When there was a vacancy last year that would have given the opportunity to have a minority and female, a former employee was willing to serve but was declined, and instead a white male was chosen to fill the seat. In speaking with students at one of our local high schools, they report the following. Having a familiar face makes it easier to want to come to school every day and feel more vulnerable to learn. And the change in principal over the last 4 years and the timing, the students felt robbed of structure and stability in leadership, which is necessary for building trust issues, relationships with leaders, and grows the atmosphere. Thank you.
Thank you. Marquise Davis.
Good evening. Mr. Lassiter could be seen in the hallways. He made it a top priority to call our names and to know our names. He sat in our senior project presentations. I never know any principal that will do that. He took every grade level into the auditorium and gave us a pep rally. The talks were powerful and empowering to everyone. The first day we met him, in the middle of the gym, he congratulated football players for their success on the field. And he was the commentator for the basketball games. And we really truly do miss him. He gets it done in the hallways. He tells us he always puts education before sports, and he's a great inspiration to me. Thank you.
Thank you. Jeremiah Mott.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I think it's unfair they took such a great leader, Mr. Lassiter, from our school. He cared for us. Whenever he was there, the teachers were more focused. Now it seems they're starting to become lax. He made us feel good about our school and have pride. He made us keep the school ground clean, the courtyard clean. Because of him, our attitudes changed. How great it was to have a man that looks like me supporting, leading, and modeling the expectations. He helped me be a better me. I was allowed to sit in on the interview for athletic director position and valued the opportunity he gave me to provide him with some honest feedback on my choice as AD. No one has ever asked us for our opinion. Mr. Lassiter valued us enough to ask for our opinion and how we feel. We like that he treated everyone the same. He gave us praise and celebrated our accomplishments with us. He was very supportive of sports and academics. I want this not only for myself, but for my future students who attend this high school. Thank you.
Thank you. Nikki Mott.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Again, we are gravely concerned. We want to make sure that we are being heard, that you don't just hear us, but listen to what we are saying. We need not only an administration that can empathize with us, but one that can be proactive and not offended when we state our concerns. We want to see that every child is treated with the same love and concern as they all deserve. We want to see your commitment to diversity in your hiring practices as you have been called on by this community to serve the needs of it. And this includes every child and potential teacher or principal. Because we are underrepresented, it is very important that you understand from our perspective that we are the voice of our children, of our community, and of our future. Thank you. I do have copies that I'd like for each of you to receive. You can look over it at your discretion. May I approach?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. While that's being passed out, our next speaker is Ricky Long. Excuse me?
My issues and comments have been covered.
Oh, very good. Thank you. That ends our public comment session. Thank you for everyone who spoke tonight. At this time, we will go into board member comments. Any board member comments? I would like to recognize, we recognized the bus drivers earlier tonight. Our automotive competition team finished 1, 2, 3 in the competition at NASCAR Tech this weekend. Over 32, it was 32 teams from southeastern United States competed. Our teams won over $50,000 in scholarships and tools. More details on that later. I'm sure we will have them here to recognize. I'd also like to recognize our robotics team from South Iredell High School that finished 1, 2 at the regional competition. Will now go to state competition in 2 weeks. I went by there today. They were meeting at Smart Lunch. I went by and met with the teams and wished them good luck. And again, we're doing some fantastic things. Also, I'd like to say that I recently received a communication from Beaufort County Schools. Beaufort County Schools has visited our Career Center, I know at least 3, I think 4 times. The last time they brought 12 people, county commissioners and all that. And they are so excited. They have modeled their Career Center after ours, and they just got a grant and will be having that officially opened or dedicated soon. And they were very excited and wanted to thank the Iredell-Statesville schools for all the help we had provided to them in their endeavor. The Chinese event for the New Year at South Iredell Saturday was excellent. I'm probably stealing some of your thunder, right? Yeah. Anyway, it was excellent. It was good to see our continued involvement with the schools in China and the cultural exchange that's going on, and that was an exciting event. Now, every spring we get into this, and it's going to be a constant flow of good things happening in the Iredell-Statesville schools, and I just wanted to bring a few of them to the board's attention. Any other comments from board members?
May I ask, just looking at the announcements and the dates at the end of that are coming up, we have a committee of the whole on March the 4th, and then we have that mid-year review on the 10th. And there was comment last time we met that we might want to revamp that mid-year review. Has that been, has anybody talked about that? Because if we're going to do that, they wouldn't have but like a week to look at it if we decided on the 4th to do it on the... So if we're thinking about doing something along that line, should we... What?
I believe we're leaving that to administration. I think it was recommended that we use, and I think we've done that the last couple of times. We used the first 2 hours as a review. I believe we've used that for the second 2 hours for different things. What was the recommendation, Mr. Johnson, this year? Mr. Kenyon, you made a recommendation.
Well, I made the recommendation that at least half of the time be spent in board discussion, talking about anything that the board needs to talk about that we don't have time to talk about otherwise, whether that be budget, whether it be personnel, whether it be goals for the board, how we want to move forward as a board, things like that. I just feel like it's just missed times, missed opportunities when we don't have an extended amount of time that we can talk about different issues. So that was what I had asked for.
Well, I like that idea, and I'm just wondering the next thing is would 2 hours be enough?
I believe it will be. That's 4 hours all day.
The reason I ask that, and I don't want to cut the administration short, but if we have 4 hours, if we say we have 4 hours, and we had an hour for the presentations and 3 hours, or an hour and a half and 2.5 hours. Because if we get into some of the discussions I think we could get into, we're going to need more than an hour or 2 hours.
Right. Thanks for mentioning that, Mr. Kelly. The staff and I have talked about this as well, and we commend the board for wanting to have some discussions that are outside the box a little bit. One of the things Mr. Kennington and I talked about was public perception. And in your Friday update, I did send you a Gallup poll about North Carolina, the public perception of public education in our state. We had a excellent opportunity back in November to create a new funding stream for the school system, and it was soundly defeated in this community. It would be interesting to hear some perspectives about why did we not get that message out, and why did that fail? So there's just lots and lots of things. The issues brought forward by these parents tonight, that may be something that we want to discuss. So I think from the staff's position on this, I think we can do a good job of putting those notebooks together for you and taking about an hour and hitting each of the strategic goals in our strategic plan. And then if you want more feedback on that at a later date, at a CAL meeting, we'll be glad to come back and provide that for you. But I think we can designate 3 hours for that Sunday afternoon for the agenda items that you want to talk about. It'll be important for you to let us know what they are. And if you want us to gather data for you to help guide those discussions, we'll be glad to do that.
What I was going to suggest is if the board members would pick their top topic they'd like to discuss, or maybe two, and send them to Kelly, then we'll get together, Mr. Johnson, Kelly, and myself, and come up with a agenda.
I'll go you one better.
Okay. You'll come up with the agenda. Thank you, Charles. I appreciate that. Charles will handle this,
Reach over
Kelly.
there and smack him like they do in the NCIS. No, what I was thinking was, like the public comment that we have here, if we go in there and you have those topics listed before we go into that room, then that's all anybody's going to say, or that's what they're going to be. I like to go into that room with those 3 hours and walk up on the board and write your topic, and that's what we'll talk about.
That's good. I get that completely, but to be fair to the public, I think we owe them a little bit.
Walked up on the board. In other words, if you don't put it up on the board when we start, you can't add it.
Well, I'll ask our attorney on that if we need to.
He's asking you something, I don't know.
Do we need to set an agenda or just go in there and talk about what we want to talk about?
Well, it's an open meeting. I guess what the public lacks is, you don't want 27,000 people coming in to see if you're going to talk about something that's of interest to them. So I think it would be helpful to have some guidance on what the agenda might be. But I mean, you're open as long as it's an open session.
Absolutely. I mean, we're free. But that's up to the board.
By putting them together, we give it a list, and then if there's anything else we add when we come in.
Oh, absolutely. We can. And that's why I was saying if y'all send Kelly, your concerns of what you would like to discuss. I'm sure some of us are going to duplicate.
Sure.
Send that in to her. We'll make an agenda, and then we'll get that out so it can be put out for public.
Yeah.
Because we do need to put the agenda out for public.
Well, get it back to us.
Yeah.
And let us see what is on the agenda.
Right. Before.
And then get it back and send it out.
Okay.
There's a date, the 19th. You gonna bring it up about the chamber meeting, Brady? It's not up there. The chamber dinner, and on the 19th, next Tuesday night.
Yeah, it was on the Friday update.
Yes, sir, but now that is coming up pretty quickly, guys, and so far, we only have Mr. Kennington signed up to come to the chamber event. So if you're available on the evening of the 19th down here at the Civic Center, the Statesville Chamber is having their annual awards banquet. Make sure Kelly knows.
Yeah, Kelly.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I had not done that. I'll be there.
Yeah, I'll be there.
19th, yeah, I had
Charles.
that.
All right, let's
Home calendar.
could you raise your hand again and let her capture who will be there that night?
Right.
So there you go.
Okay, so I've got Sam, Martin, Bill, Charles, Ken, Chuck.
That's right. There you go.
What'd you say?
Sam, Martin, Charles, Ben, Chuck.
Say that in a hurry 3 times.
I couldn't do it.
I'm sorry.
You're passing out the budget, and we did not put that on agenda, so we will not talk about that tonight, Mr. Johnson.
Yeah, that was part of my superintendent's comments. But
Okay, well, you can make comments on it, but we're not going to.
Yes, sir. It's not on the agenda.
Yeah.
I was just going to
Okay, I got
update you on the changes.
Just make sure
that
that
were
piece of paper is available to the public.
Sure, absolutely. So am I good to go ahead?
Yes, sir.
All right, so in your hand, you do have an update, and this will replace the page 3 in the materials that were given to you last Monday night. And the reason that this is being updated is our task force on student safety, security, and well-being met last week and made a recommendation. And you will notice that at the bottom of your page there is the last item. So we wanted to get that to you so that you can start digesting that and getting your mind wrapped around that just a little bit. As you can see, the placeholder that was put in the original memo to you was about 1.6 million. And so
2.6 million.
2.6 million. So the recommendation that was brought forth last week by this task force now stands at 535,000. So again, just substitute this one piece of paper for that memo, and you'll be up to speed.
Mr. Johnson, I'd like to make clear that at the request of Beth Jones, SROs we did not include SROs in our budget. We were told that SROs would be handled by the Sheriff's Department.
Yes, sir.
Is that definite?
That's what we were told in that budget meeting. I don't know if it's definite. Mr. Carver, can you?
As definite as it can be at this point, in that all budgets are being discussed at this point, but the sheriff is going to include them as a part of his requested budget. And so what we were talking about at the safety and student well-being meeting the other day was that it would be foolish to put it in our budget request and in his budget request, that he's already working to push that forward. We could concentrate on some other things at that point.
Right. I was no need to vote. I was doing it.
Right.
So,
Mr. Chairman, since you mentioned that,
You turned your budget into the county yet? Okay, that's why I was asking.
since you mentioned that, I'd like to go ahead and get legal counsel, take a look at state statutes, which requires the elected Board of Education to handle safety and security for the students, not the sheriff. And that is our...
Mr. Can I? This is not on the agenda. I'd rather not have a discussion.
Okay.
I just stated a fact that was on this piece of paper. Mr. Johnson was giving this to us for information only. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's.
I will say this though. I want to just point this out, that not all the SROs are paid for by the school system anyway. So, the majority of the school resource officers that the sheriff's office places in our schools are not paid for by the school system. So, I think that train's already left the station.
We're going to not discuss this. We'll move this on, and when we discuss budgets, and all this will be discussed at the next CAL meeting. This is for information only. Thank you.
Right. The other thing that I wanted to make sure you had was a breakdown of our school resource officers, and you've seen this many, many times before. It's broken down by each municipality along with the Sheriff's Department, and it tells you where those funds come from, including federal grants. They're called COP grants. Those grants have been frozen now, and so what we've been told is there will not be any federal COP grants coming forward for the new year. Of course, that's subject to change, but that's the latest information we have. The memo that covers this, Mr. Page had asked me the other day to do some research on this. Do we get state funding for safety? And yes, we do. But it comes to us, and our chief financial officer does have flexibility with moving that money around. So years ago, we used to have tremendous flexibility with our state budget. That has been narrowed down significantly, but in this one area, we still have that flexibility to substitute local dollars and state dollars. And in doing so, we generate some savings. And so I hope that explanation helps with that spreadsheet on our SROs. And that's all I had, Mr. Chairman.
Do what?
I know what Charles might give. I just want to make one comment. I spoke to Brady earlier in Martin. Dr. Bentley, who is our representative on the Board of Trustees of Mitchell, they just put him in the hospital. He had another bad fall, and so Dr. Bentley is in the hospital at Davis. And like I said, he's the one we appointed to the Board of Trustees at Mitchell. So, and everybody knows Dr. Bentley, but he had a fall, and he's at Davis Hospital.
Thank you for that update. There's not any other comments?
I'll make a motion, we adjourn.
Second.
I've got a motion to adjourn in a second. Any discussion? All in favor, aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Carries unanimously. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.